Can you tell I got a new record? Bill Frisell's Valentine. I wish I could play my Telecaster the way he's able to play his in his genius. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. I'm finally getting this going here on day 2 of our semester. It is January 12th, 2021. A year that many of us have been eager to see come round the corner. And we have another semester before us. I know some of you are brand new college students, but as you can see, I'm new students. I've been around the block a while, and this is, I think, my 68th semester as a teacher. And I'm very happy to see you, as I always joke, very happy to at least be seen. And once again this semester, I'm going to try, like I did in the fall with Comp 1, I'm going to try to get you 3 30-minute videos per week to try to get some humanity into this course. I just can't type out an entire course, nor do I feel confident just posting stuff up and without making an effort. So I've been working hard all across the fall, steep learning curve, trying to learn how to shoot videos with all this gear I got and edit them, and I'll be doing that pretty quick. I'll be over at St. John's University here. Sort of borrowing their Wi-Fi from my pickup truck. I got a pretty slow upload here, and I want to make sure you get this by our second day of the semester. Rough start yesterday. Oh my goodness. My 9 o'clock went okay, and then if you have a lot of gear, it's great. Like I got this with CARES Act funds from double deans, 2 different schools, Riverland and Central Lakes College, which is my day job. But things can go wrong, and I hit a button yesterday just before Honors Lit was coming around, and oh my gosh, all of a sudden I couldn't hear them. Live Zoom. They could hear me, but I couldn't hear them, and they were in the chat. They loved me well. They were trying to give me all kinds of technical advice, and none of it worked. And pretty soon I just started perspiring, because I perspire when I get nervous. And I made a couple of crap signs and just bailed. How's this? Doesn't this just scream, hey, welcome to college, I'm your professor? I made a second one too, which is really true. I need professional help. And returning students were just like, there he goes again. And the new students, I'm sure, were just maybe doing what you might be doing now. What's happening? But I got through it. A bit of a prelude here, but as I get going, I feel rusty video making wise. And maybe if I can get this done and get my video legs, my videography legs underneath me again. That sounds stupid, and too late I said it. I can move forward and get you the best remote class that at least I'm capable of offering you. I want to continue to do what I did in the fall. I take a 50-minute lesson that's live, and generally I'm able to condense that down to like a 25-30-minute thing. I'll try to keep these videos at 30 minutes. Do my best on that, because after that I know I get kind of long. So we'll run it that way, and generally in the fall it worked. Generally that 50-minute class could become a 27-28-minute vid without the interaction, because it's hard to talk through video. Though I got some stuff I want to raise the bar on this semester, me personally. So to start in on repeating and communicating to you what I tried yesterday from the heart to communicate to my 2 Comp 2s, my 9 and my 11 o'clock section. It's like a prelude. I continue, and I know you're the same. I continue to experience the world in a kind of dramatic contrast, right? Like, here's what I saw when I woke up this morning, when I looked off my front porch. That's my peat bog, and on good days it feels infinite to me, and it runs a mile in that direction. Then here's another view of my property that I do not deserve. It's a 20-acre chunk of land in Stearns County on a deep, clean, private lake that I love so much it's hard to even talk about. And I breathe the same line I breathe almost every morning when I wake up. It's a line from a Lee Young Lee poem, "The world begins again." And so it does, but I know that it is a time of great crisis. Let's just acknowledge that. We have a pandemic that's still killing people. Flickers of hope with the emergence of a vaccine, but then there's another variant of it, isn't there? Whipping around already in Minnesota. We have economic catastrophe. You wouldn't know it from looking at my retirement account or my checkbook, but there's tremendous suffering. We have millions of people out of work. Brothers and sisters of ours are going broke. Friends of mine that own businesses and restaurants that I love well, although they opened up back up today, it's trouble. And we hardly need to go into a discussion of the chaos that continues to unfold across the world and in the cities of our struggling, definitely troubled nation. Rioting, insurrections, violence, and I don't see an end to that coming anytime soon. But it's hard to you got to work at staying hopeful. When I was writing out those notes in D2L, my 61-year-old fingers paused just as I was about to admit, and I did admit that my heart's broken. I'm teaching through some heartbreak. I paused sitting here 3 days ago. I'm like, should I admit that? What about all the new people? When you're a teacher, you think that you've got to be, chipper and positive and happy all the time, and I'm not happy all the time, but I am always joyful. Am I going to let down my guard and go, wow, this is hard. This is hard. Should we admit that? And I got to thinking about a wonderful student named Gemma, who you'll never meet, I don't think, because she's a Brainerd girl, 18 years old. And I'm already lonesome for her because I don't see her on my rosters this spring, at least not yet. But we're good. We became good friends in just one class last semester. And like when you guys want to get a hold of me, just text me, email me, call me on the telephone. We'll talk about that later. But with my live Zoom kids, this happened across the fall. Almost every day, a different kid. We'd be doing the Zoom wave, and I'd say, okay, give me a Zoom wave. I'll see you Wednesday or Friday or whatever. And it happened so many times. A student would shout out, Johnson, can I talk to you after class? And I'm like, absolutely. So, you know how it goes. All the Zoom squares just quickly vanished, and suddenly it was just me and her visiting. I'm like, tell me how you are. What would you like to wonder about with me? She wanted to talk about the idea of heartbreak, the idea of having a broken heart. And it's not like she taught me this idea, but she did remind me of it. She said, a broken heart is not something you want to waste. And I thought, well, wow, how can you be that wise? She put before me the idea that suffering and heartbreak can have utility, it can have use. And only a few days after that, I came across some line, Paul's letter to James or James' letter to Paul. I don't know my Gospels. I don't know my Bible very well. The line runs, suffering leads to perseverance, and perseverance to purification. And I don't know if you can run with that at all, but let's just start this class. Let's stick together and kind of keep our gaze smooshed up against that panel called What's Next? Actually starting class at like 8 minutes in. Here's what I'd like to do today. We can't have introductions. We lost a poet last weekend named Jean Valentine. I got a text from the American poet Mark Doty, who told me that she passed on Saturday at the age of 83. So we'll start with a very brief poem by her. New students, the idea of starting an English class, even one of these, without a poem is just an impossible idea to me. I'm preoccupied with poetry, and you'll find that out soon enough. And then I think the main thing I want to do is talk about Comp 2 a little bit, get you apprised. And I'm going to do today what I did yesterday. I decided I would tell like an origin story of each class, how the class got started, in a big way, general way, or like with me personally. And because I want you to know what you're in for, or what you have is before you as an opportunity, like a kind of field that we're going to walk through together. Jean Valentine poem, origin story, and we might talk about course requirements, but we'll see, because I got to try to keep this under 30 minutes. Jean Valentine was a poet's poet. She wasn't very famous. And I'm holding here her collected works. And I'm thinking finally back to, I started the sentence this way yesterday. The last time I got to host a live poet for my Verse Like Water series, I went, wait a minute, I don't like the sound of that. I don't like the finality, that ring. And I started the sentence again. The most recent time I had the opportunity to host a poet live, it was the Iranian-American poet Kaba Akbar last October. And he was ill with the flu, 30-year-old Iranian-American rock star in American literature. And we were on a long drive to my college out of the Airport Hilton, down by the big airport. And I've been doing this since the 80s. You know, you get me in a car with a great poet, somebody pinch me, and what we talk about is poetry and poets and the people that we love. And I brought up Gene Valentine, and he just got so excited, and between coughs, his coughing, while I recited a line or two from occasional Gene Valentine poems, he just started reciting entire Gene Valentine poems. This would be a good poem for April, because it's called April. There's a little word in here too that I want you to know. It's a scary word. I've never seen it. I didn't even know they had these. The word is Gassenwagen. And apparently, in Nazi Germany, there were these endless trucks that were equipped to gas people. Like they piled Jews and even Catholics and gays into these little miniature roving gas chambers, and they would gas people and then just dump the bodies. It's kind of a hard way to start our semester. But anyway, Gene Valentine. April. Suppose we are standing together a minute on the wire floor of a Gaswagen. Suppose we are in the dark. It's warm and dry. We have food. We aren't in hiding, waiting. Mostly, we're sitting in our own light rooms. Come over. Bring things. Bring milk, peanut butter, your pills, your woolens, crayons. Nuns pray. Snow. It's dark. Pray for our friends who died last year and the year before and who will die this year. Let's speak as the bees do. She was a terrible drinker. She had to quit in 1982, and that was so traumatic for her. She didn't write a poem for 5 years. Everybody in the American poetry scene, which I'm part of, knows that. So, to review an idea for our returning students, so glad to see you, and my new students, my new friends. Why are you taking Comp 2? Let's start with a couple of problems. Unlike other classes that I teach, like yesterday I fired up my Intro to the Humanities course. Well, that and my Honors Lit, the Great Books class. Those courses proclaim who and what they are. You can kind of tell by the title. What that means. And I think down at Riverland it just says Comp 2 Research. Well, what does that mean? And why is it required? And why do you have to take it? Super fast, let me try out my secret history degree and give you a little history lesson. Courses like this, like Comp 2, have been taught in this country for over a century. You guys heard me say this fall. If you won't go make a sandwich if you're a returning student, but hurry back. And so this isn't a new thing, and I could prove it with this crazy book that I have on one of my shelves here. The book is called Freshman Composition, the Experimental Edition. And I should pick that up and see what's experimental about it, but the year on it is 1918, written during a pandemic. Sound familiar? So it's an old deal that we've been obligating college and university students to take courses like this for years. But this actually became what we're participating in, which is an industry, in the 60s. You guys, it is in the 1960s when we had the baby boom generation and all those sweet guys who fought in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia and Vietnam. We have the baby boomers that wanted to go to college, and we had these soldiers that wanted to come and use their GI Bill and get a college degree. And like nationwide, colleges and universities were presented with a serious expansion and the first of the problems, which is a ton of people were showing up to go to college, to go to a university, who not only couldn't produce mathematics much, but they had literacy issues in terms of reading, writing, speaking, and thinking. and nationwide, led by particular schools like the University of Chicago. They're like, hey, let's just ramp this up. Let's really create an industry called freshman composition and obligate university students around the country to take one rigorous, intensive course in reading, writing, speaking, and thinking, and then thereafter, they'll kind of be like inoculated, and they'll be able to be literate people that can speak and write with grace and eloquence in the other discourse communities that they go to. In other words, their other classes. Well, it kind of works and it kind of doesn't. Literacy is always historically laid at the doorstep of English departments. It's our thing, right? Personally, and it's not going to happen. We're moving away from it, actually, instead of towards the idea. I really think that writing should occur in all classes, even non-traditional classes like math and chemistry. I think all teachers should be teaching writing. All teachers should be encouraging reading, but it's pretty much on us. And I didn't say it to my 9 o'clock people because I was sleepy, but my 11 o'clock, I said, you guys, put your hand up in the air if you understand that you know I'm not going to teach you how to write. Put your hand up. Keep your hand up if you know that you already can write. Keep your hand up if you accept this not as like a tutorial, but just as an opportunity for writing, a series of opportunities to write in different ways. And we'll talk about what kind of writing happens in Comp 2 later. So the main thing to know is, we'll stay in Minnesota, although it's everywhere. Across Minnesota, all colleges and universities tend to have something like this. Down at my college, my main job at Central Lakes, it's called Comp 2. Riverland, Comp 2. And St. Cloud State, it's called English 191. St. Cloud Technical Community College, to the west of me, about 30 miles. Well, there they call it analytical writing. It's all the same course. It's all the same idea. And I'm completely happy to be doing it. And one other historical caveat: this system used to be on quarters, and in 1998, I think it switched out to semesters. And every college in the system and the universities, the 7 four-year universities, they all had to decide, what are we doing with our freshman writing requirement? Are we going to go up or go down? And many schools smushed it to just a 1-class requirement. Not Riverland, not CLC, where it's actually a 4-credit class. We rounded up, and that's why the English departments are driving the truck, at least at my main job, Central Lakes College. So I think it threw people for a loop in the bookstore at Riverland, but I think we got it figured out. Here's the thing. Comp 1 is about, I think it's largely about self-expressive writing. Short pieces. It's about the short form. And traditionally, historically, academically, we also want to give students an obligation to write from sources and do a little bit of researching, even though I think we take those courses way too far, because we're not exactly turning people into academics, are we, brothers and sisters who are professors of mine, professor friends of mine? Most of you are not going to be academics, so my approach is going to be a little bit different. Try to bottom line this part of it, and let me stay at Central Lakes College example-wise because I understand it more. At CLC, in my department of 9, the most brilliant department I've ever been a part of, there's 9 of us. If there's a weak link, it's me as the dinosaur. And it basically goes like this. We all teach Comp 1, we all teach Comp 2, and we all carved out little literature niches for ourselves. But here's how it runs. And I'll use a dear friend of mine, Ryan Deblock, Professor Ryan Deblock at Central Lakes College, who wears fleece every single day. Green fleece. I told him I was going to get a grant to help him get different colors. He teaches Comp 2 as something open-ended. In other words, when you take Comp 2 from him, there's lots of different things that he does, but we all do it our way. And Ryan, sweet Ryan Deblock, that big lug, invites the students generally to conduct research projects on whatever they're interested in. I kind of get it, but I kind of don't, as much as I love and admire him. In such a course that's open-ended, it's the teacher that trusts the students, okay? About half of the people in my department at Central Lakes, I have no idea how it goes down in Riverland, about half of us teach Comp 2 thematically. In other words, we have a theme, we have a circle. And that's me. That's always been me. All my classes have some kind of theme. In that course, it is the students who trust the teacher. It kind of flips a little bit. Although trust in both directions, cutting in both directions, I would call crucial, integral to having a good class. I'm all about the theme. It's dead simple. Why? Because the research suggests that students learn more in a thematic unit. Why wouldn't they learn more in a thematic course? And here's another way of thinking of it. I asked my students yesterday, my live Zoom squares, everybody's showing up too, gazing the screen, they're doing good. I said, how many of you have ever been sitting in a history class and you get any class, and you get a worksheet and you just pick it up and it smells 30 years old? Well, half the hands went in the air. And, you know, the corollary question would be, how many of you have ever been sitting in a course and you're listening to the teacher, half listening, and you get the impression suddenly that this teacher has said this maybe like 500 times. I would love to tell you that every class I have is something where I'm saying something new that I've never said before. No, I have ideas that I return to and concepts and stories because I love them. But I can't, here's what you got to get. Especially with online learning, you have no idea how tempting it can be to plan out an entire course, like 14 weeks, and you cook it and you curate it in D2L. And then when the new semester comes along, you just run it, boilerplate. You just migrate everything in, reveal it as the weeks go by. That's not creativity. That scares me. And those of you that know me so far would understand that. As tempting as that is, oh, do you know how easy that would make things? I just can't do it. So, just to take my 11 years, just the last 11 years of my 34-year career, at CLC, when I landed there, new students, I got fired from a teaching job. Maybe I mentioned that in that intro video. That's my street cred. I can wreck a school. I led a revolution against a priest and a principal. So when I arrived at CLC, what I didn't realize would be the greatest teaching job of my life, I thought, oh, this smells familiar. I've done this. I've taught this at St. Cloud State. I've taught it at St. John's. Taught courses like it at the College of St. Benedict, my old high school, for 20 years. And immediately I started imagining different themes that I could have. And I made a plan that I enacted, and I'm still following it. And the plan is teach thematic Comp 2s, and then every couple years, switch the theme out. So I'm reading, thinking about different things, teaching different things, and because I want to stay sharp. I love this work so much I skipped sabbatical. And let me give you some examples. And, well, let's just run through them real quick so you get the way I'm thinking. The first theme I had at Central Lakes College was called The America of Mark Twain. Dead simple class. Not everybody knows that Mark Twain was brought to Earth by Halley's Comet, and the night he died, Halley's Comet was in the sky again. It's like the comet came, brought him, and took him away. I wanted to read Ralph Waldo Emerson and Hawthorne and my beloved Walt Whitman. I just was lonesome for those guys. So in that course, students had to write about some kind of topic, research-wise, that happened during the life of Mark Twain. I ran that like a year or two, and then I switched it again. And I called the next course America Between the Wars. And I taught a course that concentrated on the historical years in the United States from 1919 to 1939. And they had to write a project about something that happened during that stretch of years. It was a shameless excuse to teach and read Hemingway and S. Scott Fitzgerald and William Faulkner, my favorites. And then I ran, what did I do then? Then I had a medieval unit because I love the medieval period. I love the Middle Ages. I love reading medieval poems and thinking about them all day. And I love the music and the paintings and the history. I'd go to Europe right now if I could take my pickup and my toothbrush and my guitars and my wife, boys too, if they'd go. And maybe only I was happy over a couple-year period. And we got through it. And then I created another course called Monstrosity in Literature. Monstrosity in Literature, that's a thing, okay? And that course I ran 1 year too long, and I don't think I want to talk about how that course ended. I'll mention anyway. I had a really bad paper. that came along that made me go, I'm not doing this again. We studied monstrosity in literature, and that, from the Odyssey, Beowulf, etc. And then when we got to Shelley's Frankenstein, that was going to be the pivot, right? At that point, students were invited to do papers on emerging science and technologies that they were interested in. But the main problem with most of the papers is that students started talking about stuff that wasn't quite here yet, and you can't research the future. So that's the end of that. And last year, only one year because it was too hard, I got so inspired by the Pulitzer Prize winning poet Peter Blakian, one of the 27 poets I brought to my beloved reading series. I got so inspired by that guy and the idea that his grandma was the only family member that survived the Armenian genocide. I'm teaching a class on trauma literature, and I tried to get my students to get interested in art, great art that came out of suffering in the 20th century, or that was produced in spite of the suffering, maybe not because of it. My kickoff example was Ray Vaughan Williams, who I adore. I'm kind of obsessed with the idea that he wrote his Third Symphony in 1943 during World War II. And he not only wrote it during the war, he conducted that thing in the Royal Philharmonic Hall while London was being hit with like V2 rockets. How does that work? How do you create music during wartime? On top of that, how do you conduct a symphony? Playing that unbelievably beautiful music again, in contrast to what was going on in the reality of the world. And it was too hard, you guys. It was just too hard, and they ended up writing a bunch of reports. Now, let me try to get to the origin of this theme. I'm bringing something back that I taught and then didn't teach and am returning to. And I got 3 minutes, hopefully. I'll try to keep it at the 30-minute mark. 3 years ago, I think, 3 falls ago, a dean up at Min West, way up in Wadena, contacted my dean, Martha, at Central Lakes College, and he was in a little bit of trouble because he had a teacher quit on him. And suddenly he needed either a humanities professor, a philosophy professor, or an English professor to teach a humanities designated course called Moral Heroes. And she took one look at that email and said something to herself like, this has got Jeff Johnson written all over it. Contact him. And this guy calls me and I'm like, what? That little mom pop school up there? You need a humanities course? And not only that, he needed it taught live. Well, what kind of maniac drives 180 miles for 14 consecutive Tuesdays to teach a humanities course? I couldn't resist for 2 reasons. Number one, the idea was completely compelling to me. And number two, I was trying to finish off paying totally for the tuition of my second son. I can still see the money burning in the yard. My wife decreed that they wouldn't borrow any student loan money whatsoever. So we destroyed our financial futures. I keep joking to create theirs. And I was trying to finish off that tuition. And I loved that course. There were like 15 students. There was a lot of driving. I hit my first deer. It was really a long fall. I won't do that again. But I was really happy starting off a class that began with the image of my beautiful aunts from the 60s that were my first heroes, and ending with studying Fred Rogers, one of the great heroes, I think, of children for a generation and a half or so in the United States of America. So I'm proposing that we move through a course that encourages us to study moral heroes. You got plenty more coming on this, as you can guess. But I'll end with the idea that if a hero doesn't have villains around, there's no work to work. They don't have much to do. And as you can anticipate, the study of heroes involves the study of villains. Maybe I'm fixing to put a course before you that's about good and evil. Maybe. I think all of my courses might be about that. I'm at the 29.24 minute mark. I get tempted to look at this little screen over here, and I know I got to look in the lens because that's where you are. Yesterday I said, raise your hand if you want to see where I was at midnight on New Year's Eve, and all the hands went up in the air, so I showed them. A little sad on the farm this year on New Year's Eve. Pretty quiet here in the middle of my peat bog. I couldn't be with all my friends across the lake at the usual gentle party that we have. We all walk across the ice. so we're not driving out where it's dangerous. And I won't go into that tradition. Hey, never done this before. Here's a very brief and very crappy video, still made with love for the people that I love. And Happy New Year's to you, Will, and Liz, and all the Boyds of the world, as well as Jeffy and Elizabeth, and my favorite dog of my life, which is Wilbur. Wilbur, this partial song is for you. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot Happy New Year. That's as good as I can do this year.